Have you ever heard a scream so raw, so impossibly human, but louder than any human could let rip, that it sinks into your bones before you even know what's happening? It's the kind that rattles your pulse, makes your eyes go damp, and sends a fist of pure ice clenching around your heart. Let me ask you, what would you do if that scream came from inside a house you just moved into? That's where the union of silence and terror begins, in Union, Missouri, in the spring of 2001. Stephen LeChance, a dad stretched too thin in rent-controlled apartments, saw an ad in the classifieds for an older house. Affordable, big enough for his kids. Quiet. The Saturday inspection felt normal, too normal. Pretty living room with cherubs painted high on the walls, pristine woodwork, a breezeway linking upstairs bedrooms like the hallways of an old theater. The owner asked, just once, "You know what you're signing up for with a place like this?" Stephen nodded, missing how that responsibility echoed in his chest. They moved in on a Friday. The kids were excited, but down on the street, someone shouted as they unpacked, "Hope you get along okay." Nothing sinister at first, just off. Then the picture he hung in the living room kept crashing down every single time he tried. And neighbors, some crossed the street rather than pass his house. That weekend, the basement door creaked open itself. His son bolted out screaming, eyes wide. "Something chased me up the stairs. Daddy, it was big." That was the first real hitch in their new normal. And then came the thermometers. One room blazing hot, the room next to it, ice cold. Lights flickering, and then, a figure, tall, dark as oil smoke, where a man should have been standing, but not entirely. Half solid, half warping mist in the kitchen doorway, watching. Imagine this, it's 2 a.m. The house is silent, eerily so. Then, without warning, a scream shatters the stillness. Not just any scream, a scream so raw, so filled with anguish, it seems to come from the very walls themselves. It's a sound that claws at your sanity, a sound that makes your blood run cold. Stephen LeChance bolted upright in bed, heart hammering. His children, his precious children, were in the next room. Were they safe? Was it one of them? He rushed to their rooms, finding them wide-eyed and trembling, but unharmed. The scream hadn't come from them. It had come from the house. The next day, the unease deepened. The house felt different, heavier, as if it were watching, waiting. The temperature in the rooms fluctuated wildly. One moment, the air was thick with oppressive heat. The next, it was biting cold. The lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. And then there was the smell, a rancid, decaying odor that would appear without warning, filling the house and making it hard to breathe. It was as if the house itself was rotting from the inside out. But the worst was yet to come. One night, as Stephen sat in the living room, trying to make sense of the madness, he heard it again. That scream, but this time, it was different. It was closer, louder, and then, a shadow appeared in the doorway, a figure, tall and dark, watching him with eyes that gleamed with malice. Frozen in terror, Stephen could only stare as the figure stepped forward, its presence suffocating the room. The air grew thick, and the temperature dropped to a bone-chilling cold. The figure reached out, its hand hovering just inches from Stephen's face. He could feel the malevolent energy radiating from it, a force so powerful it threatened to crush him. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving Stephen alone in the dark, gasping for breath. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like the air itself was watching you? Like it had a memory, like it knew your name and was judging you? That's exactly what the LeChance family began to feel as the days in that cursed house piled on. By now, the weird phenomena weren't just terrifying, they were personal. Doors slammed without wind, keys vanished only to reappear on the counter minutes later, and the family's pets refused to enter certain rooms at all. The house seemed to have favorites, and it certainly didn't like the LeChances. Stephen's wife, Rebecca, would wake in the middle of the night to whispers, soft, almost tender, but unmistakably human. Get out, they seemed to say, curling around her mind like smoke. The whispers didn't come from the walls, they were the walls. And sometimes, they escalated. The whispers became voices, voices that screamed warnings. Voices that mocked, voices that sometimes sounded exactly like someone you knew, calling from a room you just left. Then there were the scratches. Stephen's youngest, little Emily, would wake in the morning with small, red marks on her arms. "I didn't do it," she would whisper, her big brown eyes brimming with terror. The marks faded by midday, but the memories stayed, etched into her mind. One afternoon, the LeChances decided to clean out the attic. They found nothing, except a diary tacked into a floorboard. The pages were old, brittle, and written in a spidery hand. It detailed events that sounded exactly like what the LeChances had been experiencing: shadows that moved on their own, doors that wouldn't stay closed, sounds that shouldn't exist. And then, at the end of the diary, a chilling entry. "If you come here, you will never leave untouched. This house keeps what it wants." By now, friends and family stopped visiting. The house had a reputation, whispered among the neighbors. And the LeChances, they were trapped in it. Not just trapped physically, but psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. The house was evolving, it was learning, and everyone who stepped inside became part of its story, part of its whispered history, part of its hunger. The LeChances had opened the door, and now they could never fully leave. By now, the LeChances had begun to understand that the house didn't just exist in space, it existed in time, memory, and emotion. It watched, remembered, and reacted. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the corner, every cold draft wasn't random. It was deliberate. By the time the LeChances finally left, the house had already carved its mark into their lives. But the story wasn't over, not by a long shot. A new family moved in, unaware of the chaos that had unfolded there before them. Doors that didn't stay shut, shadows that lingered just beyond the corner of your eye, cold drafts and inexplicable noises. Mr. LeChance didn't vanish from the story. The new family, hearing the local whispers, reached out to him. Through letters, phone calls, and visits, he shared everything he had endured: the screams, the whispers, the scratches, the shadows. He became their guide, their warning system, the one person who could prepare them for the house's cruelty. And the house didn't care that he had left. It had a new audience now, a new family to torment. But with Mr. LeChance involved, there was a thread of understanding, a lifeline. He could anticipate some of the house's tricks and warn him, though he couldn't stop everything. The new family quickly discovered that the Union's screaming house didn't need the LeChances to continue its work. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. Whispers curled around corners, sometimes calling out names. Objects flew or fell. Mr. LeChance guided them through the strange events. "Don't touch that," he'd say, or "Keep your doors closed after midnight." His first-hand accounts helped the family separate coincidence from malevolent action. Still, the house tested them. Scratches appeared on arms and legs. Cold drafts turned into freezing gusts. Shadows seemed to stretch into the living room. The family realized that the house remembered the LeChances, and the knowledge of past experiences made the activity more unpredictable. Physical disturbances left marks, not just on walls but on people themselves. Bruises, welts, and scratches confirmed that this wasn't imagination. Mr. LeChance could prepare them, but he could not prevent the house from acting on its own accord. So, here's the question you have to ask yourself. How much of what you've heard is true, and how much has been shaped by time? Skeptics point out several issues. First, the story evolved as it was retold. Early interviews with the LeChances and neighbors don't always match the later accounts found in books and articles. Details shifted, names changed, sequences of events altered, and some of the most terrifying moments seem to have been amplified. Memory is tricky, after all, and fear makes it even trickier. Second, some reports were second-hand, coming from neighbors, friends, or journalists who were never in the house themselves. These accounts, while compelling, often contradict one another. One person might recall a shadow moving across the living room. Another claims the same night was quiet. Third, investigators who visited the house at various points sometimes recorded nothing unusual. Cameras captured ordinary walls. Audio devices picked up nothing out of the ordinary. Even the physical evidence, the scratches and welts, have alternate explanations: misadventures, self-inflicted scratches, or overactive imagination. And then there's the matter of interpretation. Human beings are pattern seekers. We find shapes in shadows, voices in static, intention where there may be none. Stories told in hushed tones, then rewritten in books or dramatized in documentaries, naturally take on a life of their own, growing more frightening with each retelling. Yet, skeptics don't have the full story either. The LeChances' first-hand experiences, Mr. LeChance's guidance of the new family, and the documented anomalies leave gaps that can't be explained away entirely. Even if some elements were exaggerated or misremembered, there's a core of genuine, unsettling events that persist across multiple accounts. The Union's screaming house thrives in that space between certainty and doubt. Its legacy is built not just on fear, but on the tension between belief and skepticism. And maybe that's exactly what it wants, for you to question, to wonder, and to feel that chill crawling up your spine. Even after decades, the Union's screaming house continues to leave its mark, not just on the walls, but on the people connected to it. The LaChances moved on, yet the story never fully ended. Through Mr. LaChance, who maintained contact with the new family, the house's history continued to ripple outward, creating a chain of first-hand accounts and shared experiences. He became a living bridge between the past and the present, helping others navigate a house that was unpredictable, terrifying, and undeniably alive in its own way. But here's where the skeptic comes in. Over time, the story has changed. Early interviews with the LaChances and neighbors often differ from later book accounts. Some events were exaggerated, unintentionally or deliberately, to create more drama. Some details conflict, dates, descriptions, even the severity of the physical phenomena. Investigators who visited at different times sometimes recorded nothing unusual at all. Photographs, audio recordings, and reports vary in reliability. For skeptics, these inconsistencies cast doubt on the legend, making it easy to dismiss as folklore or a product of fear-influenced memory. Yet, for those who experienced it firsthand, the house's presence was undeniable. Shadows, sudden temperature drops, whispers, and physical marks were all documented. Even if some details were altered over time, a core of strange, unsettling events persisted. So where does that leave us? The Union's screaming house exists in the space between legend and reality, belief and doubt. Mr. LaChance's ongoing involvement with the new family confirms that the story is not just a ghost tale. It is a human story, layered with fear, memory, and survival. And now, as you listen, as you imagine those creaking floorboards and cold drafts, ask yourself, would you believe it if it happened to you? Or would you chalk it up to exaggeration, misremembered details, or chance? The house doesn't care. It doesn't need believers. It waits. It remembers. And whether you believe or not, the story, the fear, the mystery lives on. Thank you for hanging around until the end of our tale. Every view is appreciated. If you have enjoyed it, please hit that like button and considering commenting and subscribing.